Fantastic. Awesome. Well, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre's Fireside Chat with Byron McCaughey. Thank you. I've been practicing. So my name is Abby. I'll be hosting the Fireside Chat today. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at MEC. And on behalf of the team, including all of our teams from MEC, TRAM and InnovatEd, thank you so much for attending today's session. So I would just like to begin today's event by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country from where I'm speaking to you today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and I would like to pay my respect to their elders, past and present. I acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining on this call today. So I'm just going to run through a couple of housekeeping rules just before I introduce Byron. So can I just ask everyone just to keep your microphones muted until we get to the audience Q&A later on in the session. And I'd just like to let you know as well that the event is being recorded today and we'll upload that to YouTube later on. So to kick off the session, I'll ask Byron a couple of questions for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we can get into his background, learn more about the TRAM Air program, and we'll open up the floor to questions later on after that. So please feel free to send in questions via the chat as and when they come to you. These Meet the Manager focused fireside chats have been designed as an opportunity for everyone to get to know the amazing people who run the programs within the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre, and we do a bit of a deep dive into their backgrounds and find out more of their experience within the startup space. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome Byron McCaughey, our new Translating Research at Melbourne Air Program Manager. Welcome.
Nice to be here, and hello everybody.
Fantastic. So first of all, would you be able to tell us just a little bit of background about your journey to MEC?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking after the TRAM Air program, and for anybody that doesn't know about that program, it's for research, for the research translation community and for those that are looking at commercializing their research. Yeah. And so we've got this objective of helping our teams to become investor ready. So I've been working on this program since about May. Yeah. I came in, and it's been great, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that program after. Yeah. My journey to here, it's been pretty varied. I've done a bunch of different stuff in my career. Yeah. The last being working on a startup myself for 3 years in London. It was called Track. Yeah. And we built software to help young people to better manage their finances. So we brought together all sorts of different information through bank feeds and mortgages that they might have, and everything together, and basically gave them a really nice experience which they could use together with partners or family or whoever it might be. It was a fun ride. It was a 3-year journey of all of the sort of ups and downs of startup life, which some of the audience are well aware of. We got a product to market, we had venture capital backing, went through that sort of fast growth and lots of sort of ups and downs along the way. Alas, it wasn't to be. We ended up trying to do a equity crowdfunding campaign, which I think it's starting here in Australia, but it's really big in Europe, which is basically anyone can invest any amount of money and they get shares in your business. And we tried to do that as our next funding round. Looking back on it, I realized that we put way too many eggs into that basket of that being our next round, and that being the main way that we would get finance. And it didn't work. Our pitch was too complicated. We spent a lot of money and time putting together this big campaign which went out on TV, and then we pushed it very hard. Yeah. And it wasn't quite right. It didn't quite hit the mark. It was a bit too complicated for the type of people that we were trying to get on board. And so that was 2020.
Was there any impact from COVID, or was that completely like just?
You know what, Abby? I wish I could blame COVID. I can't. It was January. It was just.
You're like, no,
yeah, no, I can't say COVID had anything to do with it. Yeah, it was all absolutely all on us. But it was okay. So that was in January, and then went through a few considerations on what to do next, and thought about diving straight back into another business. Yeah. Kind of in a way had this thing for a while where I was like, oh, I've got to go do another business.
Like almost like you have to prove yourself, like you're like, yeah, I've got to succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This one's failed. Now I've got to go and prove that I can do another one, which of course isn't the right way to be going into a new venture. And I sort of thankfully recognized that and sort of paused and was like, okay, what do I want to be doing? And this is all in London. And actually, I've always been interested in psychology. And so I decided to go down a path of becoming a psychologist, which is what I'm on now. And that brought me back to Australia. I grew up in Perth. I'd left 15 years ago and hadn't been back besides visiting since. And that brought me to Melbourne, which I'd never lived before. I'd only been here a couple of times. And I got into this psychology degree. This is last year.
And you did all the lockdown experience as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually thought we had a joke when it came in 21. I thought, oh, because lockdown here there wasn't, and I thought, oh, great, like that's the end of having to do all of that. And then March, of course, last year, here in Melbourne, of course, it all began.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, it was great to come back here and on this psychology journey. I don't know exactly where that leads, but it's some sort of I'm quite passionate about founder mental health, and it will probably be something sort of mashing the worlds of business that I know and psychology together. But I started chatting with the MEC team over that time, particularly Colin. Started having some conversations with Colin, just sharing experiences from Imperial College, which sort of jumping around in timeline here a little bit, but before working on the startup business track, I worked for a decade in lots of different roles. Everything from working in Formula One. I did advertising campaigns, particularly with the Mercedes F1 team. So I worked a lot with Lewis Hamilton, which was good fun, and did some funny things with him. We turned him into an 80-year-old man at one point using a makeup artist from an Oscar. It was an Oscar-winning makeup artist who did Voldemort and Harry Potter, and we got him in and turned Lewis into an 80-year-old man. And the whole campaign, which was for an insurance company, was to not regret your life, otherwise you'll turn old and regret that you didn't overcome your fears and challenge yourself. And so did a bunch of fun campaigns with in advertising over the years, worked in sports hospitality, a bit of a cowboy game, that one, but it was basically
an interesting one.
It's like a corporation will their top sales team, they'll come to a company like the one I worked for and say, hey, we want 100 packages to go see Arsenal versus Chelsea. And then our company will go, no problem. And then they've just got to go out there and find those packages from sponsors who shouldn't be selling, but do sell on their what they get as part of their their allocation. And so that was a good kind of introduction into sales and that kind of thing.
And that would have been a great skill set, for being an entrepreneur as well, to have all that background. So
and I think even like during that time of like working in advertising and working in sales in these roles, I always tinkered with like sort of moonlighting projects. It was always sort of had an interest in sort of building something out of nothing. One of the ones I did in London for a time was after that company I was just talking about there that do the sports packages. They went under, and I thought, right, okay, I'm over it, sort of early 20s, and I was like, right, okay, I've got no job. I'm in London. I need to sort of build something here to find some way to bring in some money. And I thought, okay, I've got all of these great contacts in sport. Like I can get tickets to anything. I can get, entertainment as well. You want to go to rugby, you want to go to football, want to go to the West End. Like I had all of these contacts who had allocations of packages and tickets. And I thought, okay, that's good. That's a good network. Like who needs that kind of stuff? And I thought, tourists do. It's like, all right, so tourists need access. But who deals with tourists? I was like, no, concierges deal with tourists. So I started this little side thing called Middleman Concierge, where I just walked around to every hotel in London, all the 5-star hotels, went up to the concierge desk and said, hey, I'm Byron, and I can get access to any ticket, to any package, to any sport or entertainment in the city. Me thinking that, it'd be the first time they've ever heard this. Of course, they've got, they've been doing this for decades, and they've got contacts who have been helping them do this for decades. But I think they appreciated this young Aussie guy coming out with a fancy business card that they got a friend to design, kind of handing it over. And in the end, I ended up having a bit of fun with that, where, you know, I would like get these calls from, I don't know, like the Dorchester Hotel or something. I'd be like, hello, Byron, like, you know, this is Susan. I've got a guest here that would like to go to, you know, whatever, the rugby, the Wallabies versus New Zealand. Actually, it would be more England, wouldn't it? England versus Australia rugby. Can you get packages, hospitality packages? And I'd be like, hang on, wait there, like call up the supplier, like, hey, I need 4 packages to the England, Australia, and they would be like, okay, this is X price, and then I would just add my markup and go, okay, I can get it, it's this price, and then of course the concierge would then add their markup for the guests, and this sort of chain of events. But it was fun, and that
would have been just like a good introductory and like a good learning curve, for your next venture. And
I think it just gave me a bit of a taste for just doing your own thing, and the kind of I guess the dopamine and the thrill of like, you know, just creating your own thing and the hustle.
Absolutely. All right. Back to questions again. I'm just gonna double check here. Fantastic. Awesome. So you've obviously spoken a little bit just about track there and given us a bit of an intro. I've got a couple of questions just around obviously when track finished up, you know, what were your lessons sort of like learned there, but also how did you sort of you know, do the juggle around like working and growing your startup and things like that. So
sure. So when I was working full time for advertising agencies, largely just before track, and I always thought, I'm just gonna walk into my boss's office and I'm just gonna quit one day and I'm gonna go do my startup. And this was the kind of I guess the fallacy of like, that's the way you have to do it, because you're told, you know, you have to just be on this full time and then that's the only way. And in the end, I realized that I wasn't going to do, because I think probably quite rightly, like I just didn't have the guts to go and do that. And I look back on it and realize actually that wouldn't have been a smart move anyway. And so my sort of transition was to go and study. So I did an MBA at Imperial College. It was a full-time MBA, which was great. So I got to spend a year at this institution that really values entrepreneurship and innovation, and just throw a bunch of ideas against the wall and, you know, really just play around with different areas.
So you did your study full-time then? So did you finish up with the advertising?
Yeah, so that I did have the guts to walk into my boss's office. So I'm going to go do an MBA. I didn't just say I'm going to go do a startup, but I did for an MBA. But I had a really like clear goal from day one, which was find somebody in something that I'm interested in. And, you know, that obviously there's lots of different routes into being a founder, and, you know, people in the audience will have their routes. And this was just the one that worked for me. But to answer your question, after the MBA, my co-founder and I realized that we needed some money, as in just personal money, not venture money. So what were we going to do? And so we ended up consulting, just helping. So I helped startups with marketing, and Henry helped them with investment, because he had a startup before. And we did that for 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week we worked on track. And we did that just so we could pay rent, and so that we could actually, you know, we could be working on the business, because there's nothing more stifling to creativity than financial stress. Like if you can't pay rent, like you're not thinking about changing the world, you're thinking about like paying rent. And so we were really conscious of that, and we were able to, as we started bringing in venture money, we were able to stop doing that 2 days a week consulting. But I just always I always think it's a good thing to remember is you don't have to go. I know, not necessarily talking to an audience who's like, you know, everyone's here thinking, oh, how do I get into this world? But just in general, I think it's a good thing to remember that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be, oh, it's going to go from, you know, 0 to like full on. You know, you can transition into it. Can you find, you know, can your work, you know, would your boss actually let you work on that sort of side project if thought it was beneficial for the business? And you can kind of transition into the point where you're working full time on the venture.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. So I know you just touched on Imperial College just then, but so as far as we know as well, you're still a business coach in residence there, so you still have that position. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that role, what that entails, and also just maybe talk a little bit about the differences between entrepreneurship in the UK and in Australia?
Yeah, sure.
Interesting. So I think we always have that conversation around, you know, the differences between Australia and America, but it'd be interesting to see with the UK and Australia.
Sure. So Imperial, as I was saying before, is an awesome ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship. They really support researchers, they support students, they have different programs, much like MEC does.
You set up the mentor program.
Yeah, they have mentor programs there, which I was a big part of. And so the goal is the same, between institutions. It's, to provide the best support possible to help students and staff to realize, these entrepreneurial sort of ambitions that they've got. So that goal is absolutely constant. The ecosystem there is bigger in general in terms of London as an ecosystem. Well, actually, I shouldn't keep saying London, of course. Imperial's in London, but the UK and Europe, the ecosystem is bigger than Australia. Yeah. But the ambitions are still very much the same. And what ended up happening here, which was great, is that just some of the things that I picked up from working with lots of different teams over there and working both as a founder, being part of the programs, but then also I helped with the design of the different mentorship programs and other things. It's just being able to sort of take some of that and look at, taking all the great work that's happening here at MEC, how can we test different things? How can we try out different mentor programs or try out different styles of programs, much like the pilot that we're running right now with Air. It's been great to kind of see that actually it's quite similar. Underneath it all is a similar ambition, which is great.
Fantastic,
It's just how, with the resource, time and people, that's available, how do you make the most impact you possibly can? And that's just, trying out different things and tinkering around.
Fantastic.
But it's been fun to stay involved with Imperial. I still do a lot of, but I do a lot of coaching there with their startups. And it's fun to just keep kind of on the pulse of what's going on over there.
Yeah, it's always good, I think, to know what everyone else is doing as well, isn't it? For sure.
I think the businesses are quite similar in terms of, tackling, climate change or tackling, whether it's med tech or whether it's, financial. The businesses are different, but they're all everyone's tackling similar problems. And that's another constant wherever you are in the world. The big global problems are the big global problems, and teams are wherever you are trying to tackle those. So lots of similarities in a really positive way. And it's been really nice to get involved with MEC and meet everybody and learn about the ecosystem here in Melbourne, which is an awesome ecosystem, and Victoria and all the money that the government puts into teams here. That's something that's definitely different. Certainly don't see as much of that in the UK. It might be there, and I just didn't have access to it in my business because of the nature of the business, but it certainly seems like the Victorian government has a lot of great grants and a lot of great free money, which as a founder is the kind of holy grail.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, fantastic, awesome. Can you tell us actually just a little bit more about TRAM Air program and its recent reboot? So it'd be really good just so everyone on the call can learn a little bit more about TRAM Air here.
Yeah, well, TRAM's been a great, TRAM Air has been a great program that's been running for a few years now. And working with Andrew and Bonnie, we sort of had this challenge of, okay, so what's the purpose of TRAM Air? It's the latter stage of the TRAM journey. So there's the different TRAM programs, and TRAM Air is for the later stage. They're not late stage businesses, but later stage in terms of the early stage of incorporating a business. And so we decided to have a very clear goal, which is to help our teams become investor ready. And it's a big goal. It's got a lot of different elements to it, but from a program perspective, it gave us a filter to put all of our decisions through. Does this content stay? Is this guest speaker suitable? Do we need money to support them? All of these questions all go through the filter of, does it help our teams become investor ready? And if the answer is yes, great, it stays. And if the answer is we're not sure or no, then it goes. And it sounds obvious.
No value then,
it sounds obvious, but having that sort of clear objective in the program and I don't have that much experience sort of designing, creating sort of new programs. So it's been great to well, I say new, like evolving programs such as TRAM Air, particularly on the research side, which is not originally where I came from. So it's been great to work with Andrew and Bonnie and the team, and just creating what I think is a really nice program for those teams that are like, right, we're ready. We're ready to get some money. We're ready to get this thing out there, whatever it is. And we need some support. Let's go. It's been really nice to see.
Fantastic. Lovely. So I think we'll just get into a little bit about your psychology background next. So as well as working at TRAM, you're also studying psychology at the university. It would be really good to hear just about why you chose psychology, and sort of, was it very difficult to kind of pivot into like a different direction, or easy, or
I've always been interested in why I do things, why other people do things, and just had that general curiosity, and that's always been there. I took it also during the startup days. I recognized like mental health is a thing, like it's as a founder, it's a thing. You have the additional stresses and anxieties. And Henry, who's a co-founder of Track with myself, we really put in place like mechanisms to try and make sure that like mental health issues or just relationship issues in general didn't become a reason for the business not doing what it could. So for example, we had a thing every Friday called Founders Forum, where we would sit down and be like, okay, what have I been doing great this week? What is something that I think I could be improving? And then I would say the same to him, what's something you've been doing great, and what's something that I'd love to see more of. And even that language of like love to see more of, like, it's not what have you been doing wrong, naughty, like it's like, okay, what I'd love to see more of. It's just that language as well. It's sort of non-threatening, and it just gave us a forum to have open communication. And as co-founders, and any co-founders on the call will attest to this, you're with this person a lot, like you're with this person every day, basically. And so having mechanisms in place that can support, relationships and your mental health in general. And so that's just one example of being really interested in the mind and psychology. And so when I had this time, middle of COVID, where it's like, what's next? I thought, what, I would love to learn more about how to work with mental health and work with people who, and this is a big thing for me around mental health, is that there's a little bit of a stigma of, I go see a psychologist, or I go and get support if I'm broken. I'm broken and I need fixing.
I think it's like you said, it's with that stigma, it's not as maybe bad as it used to be, like especially with like our parents' generation and stuff, but it's definitely still there, isn't it? 100%,
And so I really like the idea of challenging this idea that you can go and get psychological support or knowledge because you're looking to enhance your life. You're looking for better relationships, you're looking for more assertiveness at work, you're looking at being a better founder with your team, you're looking at having, anxiety having less of a hold of you in your life. And so I'm really interested in exploring that side of psychology and psychological support. And then with my kind of UX, user experience hat on, I also think there's an awesome opportunity to change the way in which we experience going and seeing someone. It's a little bit, I saw a psychologist here in Melbourne not so long ago, and it was very much of the ilk of walking upstairs in this drab old building, sitting down in the waiting room, getting told, the psychologist will see you now, walking down this drab hallway, sitting down, fake flower, box of tissues, I think there's a real opportunity to challenge the way in which we experience.
We can do better, can't we?
And so what does that look like? I'm not 100% sure yet, but I can imagine a space which is inviting and you want to walk into, and you're happy to be there and seen. And so I'm really curious to sort of play around with the experience of seeing a psychologist as one area, and maybe that's a private practice of some sort, who knows? And then the idea of, why do you go see a psychologist? And so, it's fun it's like exploration stage. Is anyone on the call, who's had that time of exploration before you get into the kind of execution? It's a fun time. You're just exploring and you're just kind of figuring it all out. And it's been so great to be working here at TRAM with the teams, because I'm constantly getting inspired by all the teams that I meet and all the people. And it's just a great environment to just be around innovation and ideas, because it gets you thinking and gets you motivated and gives you good energy. So it's been a really nice combo.
Absolutely, fantastic. What I might do, instead of just launching into another question, is there anyone on the call that maybe wants to jump in and ask Byron a question? just before I shoot on to the next one, I'm just a bit conscious of time as well. But yeah, feel free to take yourself off mute, or you can pop it in the chat. Otherwise, I will ask you another question. No? All right. That's it. Fantastic. So what I might ask you next is, yeah, this one was quite interesting actually. So in a Medium article you wrote recently, you talk about how being an entrepreneur can be good for your mental health, which I thought was a really interesting perspective, as we're always hearing, you know, how stressful it can be trying to get a startup off the ground. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So just for just for context on that. So I've been trying, like, one of my sort of challenges to myself during sort of COVID period and then coming out of it is to just create content of things that are interesting to me. It's not about like people want to read it or get engaged with it, that's great, but it's also just the idea of like putting stuff out there, overcoming that fear of putting stuff out there and that sort of thing. And so one of those areas, along with doing a podcast, which has been fun, in other areas is writing. And so so this article that you're talking about, it was, I base these articles on, I find research that I find interesting and then try and just put the sort of real life tilt on it. And ultimately what came out of a lot of the research that's out there is that, yes, absolutely, being a founder has elements of increased anxiety, increased stress, increased uncertainty, risk of burnout. Absolutely, they're a thing, that's for sure. But what the research actually finds is that the positive psychological benefits of being a founder, so things like that feeling of autonomy, that feeling of independence, of creating something from nothing, the dopamine that gets released from wins, like all of these very positive emotions actually trump the negative. I shouldn't say negative, the other that are deemed to be detrimental, you know, anxiety, stresses, and they actually trump those ones. And they find this out by doing a lot of, you know, doing research with founders. And I just thought that was really interesting that, there's no denying that there is potentially detrimental mental health outcomes of being a founder, for sure. But actually the really sort of positive, the positive side that you get from a psychological perspective ends up, for most people, and of course, you know, this research is fallible, of course, and it's not saying this is across the board, but for most people, according to the research, the positive mental health benefits outweigh the detrimental.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so if anyone's interested in that, it's on Medium, and I put a link to where all that sort of data comes from and the research that they did with a bunch of different samples of founders from all across the world.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. What I'll probably do actually when we send this recording out is just link your LinkedIn and your Medium and things like that, so people have access to that. Yeah, for sure. We do have a question here. This one's from Bonnie. What is the best thing about working in Melbourne Connect?
Sitting across from you, Bonnie. Of course. No, as I said before, I'm loving just being, I came to Melbourne, I didn't know many people, period, but I certainly didn't have a connection in with the entrepreneurial and innovation scene here. And so it's been awesome to be seriously immersed in that, because, you know, this is one of the great universities of Australia, with one of the great entrepreneurial hubs for any university in Australia, and to be sort of in the middle of that around the people here, both from the founders through to the team at MEC, it's great. It's inspiring. It's fun. It's it's fun to be a part of, and it gives me energy to kind of keep. Because creating something from nothing, you need that like energy. You need to like have that I want to do this, and I've got my and I've got my sort of, as I was talking about before, things that I'm curious about, looking at creating around this in the psychology world, and it's great just to see that being done all over the place here, from the teams in the programs through, and that that includes, of course, MAP and all the other programs, but also just being involved in the events and just seeing the hustle of the MEC team, making sure they provide the best for for these students and staff. It's great. It's inspiring and fun to be around.
Fantastic. You have to ignore my stomach there. It's hungry. So, is there anyone else that wanted to ask a question, or I will shoot back to my lovely list here? Okay, feel free to drop anything into the chat if it comes to you. So you did mention actually the Psyched podcast, so where you explore psychological concepts and apply them to real life situations. In one of your episodes, you spoke about how you've consistently received positive feedback on your pitching style, and that you communicate really well. However, you did mention that you are usually quite nervous before like a pitch or a presentation or something like that.
Yeah.
Would you be able to give us any advice on dealing with the nerves?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just for context on that, it was like this. It's this kind of trap in life where somebody tells you you're good at something and you hear it again and again and again. In my case, it was pitching, and I've done hundreds of pitches, and not every time, of course, but at times people say that's a really good pitch, Byron. You're good at presenting and communicating, and that seems like a blessing because it's meant to give you confidence, and next time you go in there, you're meant to be like, yeah, like I know I've got this.
Yeah.
But actually, what happens with me is it then kind of means, oh.
Now I've always got to be on,
like it creates an expectation in my, and this is just me. It's it's obviously nobody else's fault. This is me. It creates an expectation in myself. Oh, therefore I've got to maintain this. It becomes part of your identity. And then if it doesn't happen, then what does that do for yourself?
No one said that I was good.
So it creates. And I'm aware of this, and it's good. Often with all of these type of things, it's awareness. It already softens it, but it does create anxiety.
Yeah.
And so. And my brain as well, like my fight or flight, if I've got a presentation to do, doesn't matter whether I've done 100 before, my brain goes, this is a threat, flight, like get out, like do not, what are you even thinking about standing up on that stage? And that's the way my brain is programmed. And so to answer your question of how I deal with that, one is just accepting that, because I think one of the things that we can do, which makes it worse, is to try and fight it.
Yeah.
Like you're about to go up on stage, or you're about to give a pitch, and you're like, I'm fine. And you're not, and you're fighting the natural, physical reaction that you're having. When actually, if you just go, oh, hey, body, like thanks, because actually your body's just trying to do your body's just trying to do the best it can, and it's not trying to go against you. It's just doing what it thinks it needs to, and just trying to cut trying to cut that circuit, and just going, okay, I got it, and I got it, and even that just softens it already. And then the other one is just getting present in the room. Like I remember doing a pitch in the early days of track. It was in front of like 300 people. It was for a 10K prize. We really wanted to win it, and we went up there, we did the pitch, and we ended up winning. But afterwards, I couldn't remember the pitch. Like I was just not even in the room. I was just like the sort of stress of it. I was just on autopilot, and that is like it went okay in the end. But that's the opposite to just coming into the room, feeling your feet on the floor, looking around,
just taking present.
And that really makes a huge difference in any type of emotional response. In this case, it's to pitching, but just getting in the room, being present just softens it, and then it gives you the best chance of kind of going up there and communicating to the best of your ability. Yeah.
Fantastic. I've got another one in the chat just here. Oh, fantastic. So really good to hear about your podcast, Byron. What are your top podcast recommendations for budding founders? And why? That's a good one, Sarah. Thank you.
Gosh, thanks, Sarah. I don't actually have that many straight up for founders, but I've been listening to Tim Ferriss for years, and I just think, you can scroll through that catalog, and it doesn't matter what your situation is in life. It doesn't have to just be founder. You can go through, and he does speak to the best in class across everything from investing to founders to relationships to to psychology to neuroscience to whatever. And so that's one that I've just always gone back to for years and years and years. So I really enjoy that. And just as a complete off the side, I'm listening to Smartless recently with the people from Arrested Development, but that's just a sort of a bit more of a fun sort of comical one.
I think you need the balance though. I find, I like listening to podcasts that are, where I'm learning something, but then I also just need some like fun comedic sort of value as well. And
then just like dipping into a bunch of other ones. And then with our one, we just try it, like we interview professors and we just try and take what they're doing, and as you say, like put real life tilt on it. And it's been fun. It's been fun just to chat to different, we had a lady on the other day, Olivia Carter, who's who studies the unconscious, and just like having this conversation about the unconscious mind. It's like I didn't understand like a lot of the conversation, because it's so philosophical. Like you almost just need to like be sitting there around a campfire discussing it. But it was really interesting. So I'm plugging my own podcast here, but we sort of we try and pick different topics and sort of drill into them, and they're linked to psychology in some way. And it's just for people that are interested in psychology or studying, of course.
Fantastic. Awesome. I'll jump into another question. What have we got here? So you did raise capital whilst you were a founder at TRAC. Would you be able to just walk us through that experience? So what was it like working with investors, and any key learnings, that you maybe would do or wouldn't do next time as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so our first round was a family and friends round with 80 people. And 40 of those people were classmates from our MBA class, which was pretty cool. Like these MBA programs, they always pitch like, oh, your network, it's going to be, so you're going to have this awesome network. And of course, you hear that and you're like, okay, I hope this is true. But that was like a real tangible that was a tangible outcome from that. But we really put together a campaign to bring in that family and friends round. I think that was a good move. We sort of, much like you'll always hear about, you're needing lots of like touch points with investors along the way to get to that point. We did that with a big group of the like low hanging fruit of family and friends. Unfortunately, obviously wasn't to be for them in terms of this investment, but just as a general thing that I learned is that you've got these people around you that do want to support, but they're not going to support it. They're not going to do it just because. You've got to bring them on the journey. You've got to get them involved and sort of get them sort of believing in what your mission is, and that takes time, just like it does later down the road with venture capital. So that was a big lesson: is not to treat early angel investors or family and friends investors as just kind of an assumption that it's just quick and easy. It takes time, and you've got to treat it like a campaign, much like you would with a venture capital fund down the road. In future things, will I go down VC route again? Maybe, but ideally not. Like I'd probably rather not try and for this next project around what I'm talking about, I probably will try and avoid venture capital. There's nothing wrong with it. It was a good experience. Learning, really understanding, cap tables and learning about contracts, and realizing how brutal cliffs, like 1 year cliffs are, and all of these things, like just getting to understand the terms that go into document. That was a really good one for anybody that's kind of going in that journey. Even if you're not the one out of the founding team that deals with that directly, still take the time to learn it and understand it, because you're signing up to something that is going to have a huge impact on your life as a founder. So just take the time to learn the kind of nitty gritty of what it all means in terms of the contract, especially with a venture capital fund. It'll be a long contract with a lot of clauses.
So just make sure you understand it.
Just take the time. I'm just talking about myself here. Like I had to learn. That wasn't my background, so I had to take the time to learn it. I'm glad I did, because you're signing up to something and you're going to be putting in the majority of your daily life on this thing. You want to make sure you understand how vesting works, what's going to happen, what happens if I decide to leave, like all of those things. I think it's super important.
Fantastic. All right, no questions in the chat. I will jump over to let's have a look at this will be a good one, actually. Are you working on any side hustles at the moment, or what are your main focuses over the next 12 months? Basically, what's next? What's next, Byron?
Sure. No, not really. So I'm working, working with the TRAM team is a big one. Studying, like I'm in a full-time master's program, so it's like it is pretty intensive.
So full-time study and working here. Wow. That's big.
So it keeps me busy, but I am very excited about putting out content and just putting out articles and podcasting and that sort of thing. I enjoy that. And then I'm going to keep toying around with this idea of a new experience of receiving psychological support and challenging the reason to receive psychological support. And that gives me the energy. I think there's a real space for that, for, you know, and it's not to say other reasons for going and seeing, you know, getting mental health. There's all sorts of more acute mental health issues which absolutely need, you know, a targeted intervention and treatment. But there's this huge group of people where they would really benefit, and they would really they would enhance their lives, but they're sort of a little bit caught up in the, oh, that's not, you know, I'm not broken kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to challenging that and challenging that in the way, and how do you try to change that mindset? Well, I think it's already shifting a little bit, which helps. So you're not trying to you're not trying to create something from nothing. I think COVID, as you mentioned before, has released a little bit of the stigma around these topics, which is great. And so it's also great to see like mental health companies. I've given the name of the map one, but it's great to see these mental health companies coming out and you know, and tackling sort of these areas, because it's an absolutely huge area, and there's all sorts of companies tackling different parts of it. My bit that I'm interested in is those people that could really benefit but don't, because you know, for reasons that we talked about, the lack of experience, not a good experience, and the kind of the mindset around, you know, being broken and needing fixing, and that not being them. So that's going to certainly keep me busy between the three.
Absolutely, fantastic. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today. So I will wrap up there. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. Please also join me in just saying a huge thank you to Byron for answering all these questions and sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us. If anyone would like to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
So LinkedIn is a good one. There's not too many Byron McCaughey, so just pop that in there and you'll find me.
Fantastic. And if you'd like to keep up to date regarding our future events as well, make sure you sign up to our MAP and TRAM newsletters. I'll send out a recording of the chat later on today, and I'll also include a link to our newsletters, how to connect with us on socials, and also I'll link to your LinkedIn and Medium and podcast and everything else that you have. So thank you again, everyone, today. Big thank you to Byron, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.